In the heart of 17th century Rome, a city being reborn in stone and splendor, two titans of architecture waged a silent, lifelong war. This was not a war of armies, but of genius, ambition, and bitter rivalry. On one side stood Gian Lorenzo Bernini, charismatic, celebrated, the darling of popes and princes. He was a sculptor, a painter, an architect, a true Renaissance man born a century too late, whose charm was as potent as his chisel. On the other, Francesco Borromini, introverted, melancholic, a stonemason's son whose mind burned with a revolutionary vision of architecture. Where Bernini was classical and grand, Borromini was complex and daring, twisting stone into forms of unprecedented motion and emotion. Their story began in the shadow of the greatest church in Christendom, St. Peter's Basilica. Both men worked under the master architect, Carlo Maderno. But when Maderno died, it was the suave Bernini who, through connections and sheer force of personality, inherited the prestigious commission. Borromini, the more experienced architect, was relegated to a subordinate role, his contributions uncredited, his resentment simmering. He watched as Bernini became the artistic dictator of Rome under Pope Urban VIII, securing every major project, leaving Borromini with only the scraps, small, awkwardly shaped plots of land that no one else wanted. Yet it was on these difficult sites that Borromini's genius flourished. He created San Carlo alle Quattro Fontane, a masterpiece of undulating walls and complex geometry that seemed to breathe. It was a direct challenge to Bernini's classical harmony, a declaration that a new architectural language was possible. But genius without political skill was a liability in papal Rome. When Urban VIII died, his successor, Pope Innocent X, despised the Barberini family and their favorite artist, Bernini. This was Borromini's moment. The Pope commissioned him to design the grand church of Sant'Agnese in Agone, located in the center of the magnificent Piazza Navona. The piazza itself was to be adorned with a monumental fountain, and the Pope explicitly excluded Bernini from the competition. But Bernini was a master of intrigue. He crafted a stunning silver model of his design for the Fountain of the Four Rivers and arranged for it to be secretly placed in a room the Pope would pass through. Upon seeing it, Innocent X was so captivated that he broke his own decree. The only way to avoid using Bernini's designs, he reportedly said, is not to see them. The commission was snatched from Borromini's grasp. The fountain was built, a triumphant spectacle of Bernini's art, directly in front of Borromini's church. A popular, though untrue, legend arose that Bernini had designed the statues of the river gods to recoil in horror from the facade of Sant'Agnese. For Borromini, this public humiliation was the breaking point. He spiraled deeper into paranoia and depression, convinced that his rival was actively plotting against him. He became increasingly difficult, destroying many of his own drawings in fits of rage. Yet in this darkness, he produced his most sublime work, Sant'Ivo alla Sapienza, with its breathtaking corkscrew lantern dome that spirals towards the heavens, a symbol of his tormented soul reaching for the divine. While Bernini lived a long, celebrated life, dying rich and famous at the age of 81, Borromini's story ended in tragedy. In the summer of 1667, after a night of frantic work and illness, he fell upon his own sword. He survived for a day, long enough to repent and receive last rites, a final dramatic act in a life defined by struggle. For centuries, Bernini was remembered as the master of Rome, while Borromini was a footnote. But history has a way of re-evaluating genius. Today, we see them not as winner and loser, but as two opposing forces that, together, forged the unforgettable face of the Baroque city. One gave Rome its grandeur, the other gave it its soul. Subscribe.